Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, January 14th, 2016. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. This week, Homebrewer Phillip McDaniel shares some crystal malts that he made himself at home. Steve and I sample some pale ales that I brewed with that very crystal malt. If you're new to home brewing or would like to get into the hobby for the first time, check out our website, basicbrewing.com, where you can find archives of our audio and video podcasts and our DVDs to walk you through basic and more advanced brewing techniques. And if you buy any of our DVD combos, you get a free Basic Brewing bottle opener. And don't forget to get a fresh copy of our Brewer's Logbook for 2016. A bunch of you are doing that. You can use it to log and track up to 50 batches of beer. You can follow me on Twitter. My username is Basic Brewing, all one word. We also have a Basic Brewing Radio and Basic Brewing video page on Facebook at facebook.com/basicbrewing. Thanks again to everybody clicking on the Amazon.com associate link on our basicbrewing.com site. Whenever you think of Amazon, think of us first. Go to our website, basicbrewing.com, click on the associate link on the right-hand side of the page. It won't cost you any extra, and you'll be helping us to bring you the show, and we greatly appreciate your support. We also have associate links for Brew Your Own magazine and the American Homebrewers Association on our site as well. You can find our Basic Brewing iPhone app on iTunes, our Android app on Amazon.com. We have a Windows Phone app. We're in the BlackBerry podcast directory, and we're in the Stitcher app as well. If you want to put a tip in our tip jar, some coinage in our guitar case, you can go to basicbrewing.com/support, and thanks to everybody who's done so already. And if you contribute via the support link, I'll send you an email with links to this year's bonus video showing Steve making Kansas City-style burnt ends out of a chuck roast and cooking up his personal barbecue sauce recipe to go along with it. You'll also get a link to the recipe PDF with recipes for the meat, the sauce, and the beer that Steve used in the sauce and in the cooking of the meat. But wait, there's more. I'll also send you links to the previous 2 years of bonus stuff. basicbrewing.com/support. We thank very much everybody who has done so already. Let's take a peek into the mailbag, shall we? I got this note from Jason. Just wanted you to take a look at pnwhc.com and see if it sounds like something that might be of interest to your followers. This is the inaugural event of this Pacific Northwest Homebrewers Conference. So we could use all the media exposure we can get, Jason says. You might even consider attending. So if you go to pnwhc.com, you'll learn about the inaugural Pacific Northwest Homebrewers Conference happening in Vancouver, Washington on March 4th and 5th. It's set to bring together homebrewers from Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Montana, and British Columbia. It sounds like a lot of fun, and I would consider attending, but I'll be going to New Zealand for their conference a couple weeks after that. So maybe next year y'all have fun up in Vancouver, Washington on March 4th and 5th. Matt in San Antonio has sort of a question that I get fairly frequently. At least Matt says, a quick question that I'm sure others have dealt with. My Christmas beer never carbonated. Fermentation went well, primary for a week and secondary for about 8 days. My first guess was that I didn't add enough priming sugar, so about 2.5 weeks ago, I added 1 carb tab to each bottle, 12 and 22 ounce. After 2 weeks, still flat beer. Matt says, I've read about yeast being stressed or the beer too strong, 10% ABV. This has never happened to me in nearly 10 years of home brewing. I've seen others say to add yeast to the bottles. My question is, how much yeast? I hope you or one of your many knowledgeable listeners or friends might know. Also, I'm sure I don't need to add more sugar in with the yeast. I don't want bottle bombs in my Groundhog Day beer. Well, I'm assuming there is plenty of sugar in there, especially since Matt added extra, and that the yeast has probably reached its alcohol tolerance, I'm thinking. And I'm also assuming, since Matt is in San Antonio, that the bottles are being kept in a warm space, warm enough for the yeast to do its work. A lot of times I caution or advise people just to wait, and maybe the yeast will work. But again, if the yeast has reached its alcohol tolerance, it may be just done. So now the question is, what next? If Matt adds a tiny bit of champagne yeast or another strain that is more alcohol tolerant, might that do the trick? But then does he risk creating bottle bombs because that strain would eat too much sugar? Not only eat the priming sugar, but eat some of the leftover sugars from the fermentation of the previous yeast didn't eat? So it's a tricky one. What would you do? Have you run into this before? I suggested that Matt get into kegging, but he says, no, that's not going to happen right now. So short of getting into kegging and kegging all of the beer, what is the proper course? Drop me a line and let me know what you would do. James at basicbrewing.com. Have you run into this situation where you get a high-gravity beer, the yeast says, nope, I'm done, and leaves it uncarbonated? Drop me a line. Let's talk a minute about our sponsors, Desiree and Dave of High Gravity in Tulsa. Did Santa bring you that electric brewing system that you wanted for Christmas? No? Time to take the situation into your own hands. Go to highgravitybrew.com and check out the variety of electric brewing systems that High Gravity offers. You can go the way that I have and get the 240-volt brew-in-a-bag system with a pump, the 10-gallon system, or you can go the 120-volt 5-gallon system with a pump or no pump. Or you can go a different route with 3-tier electric systems. High Gravity offers systems that can brew from 5 gallons all the way up to 2 barrels. And their website has a tool online where you can customize your system to your needs. You can check out a video of Steve and me demonstrating the system that I have at youtube.com/highdgravitybrew. I watched that last night, coincidentally. And of course, for ingredients and many other products, High Gravity offers $7.99 flat rate shipping. That's highgravitybrew.com. It's been too long since I've brewed. I need to get my system out and take advantage of some mild weather that we're having this week. Okay, Steve and I have been playing with roasting, or in the past, Steve and I have played with roasting base malt before to make our own specialty grains or specialty malts, but we didn't get into crystal malt, which is a bit more complicated. The process is. Phillip McDaniel has been working with the crystal malt process, and he sent us some samples to play with. Phillip McDaniel, welcome to Basic Brewing Radio.
Well, thank you, James.
You have sent us, usually people send us beer and we taste it, but you sent us raw materials, and which I turned into beer and sent back to you. So it's kind of a flip-flop this time.
It's all part of the plan, James. I'll be sending base grain next week.
You'll just send me hops. I'll make beer out of it and send it back to you. Well, turnabout is fair play. I've gotten plenty of free, delicious homebrew from listeners over the years, and I hope that my homebrew was at least passable. You have to be nice because most people don't get to taste what I brew. They just hear us talk about it and see it on the video. So you have the power to either you have the power to out me as a bad brewer if I am in fact a bad brewer. So be kind.
All right, power in my hands. So starting off well, James.
All right. Well, you sent us some really tasty stuff. You made crystal malt, and so I want to start from the beginning. Where did you get the inspiration or the idea to do this?
Well, I'm sure, like all of us, I read something online, or I didn't have crystal malt, or woke up in a cold sweat at midnight one night or some such. But it's been about, I guess, 3 or 4 years ago when I first tried this. And this is the 3rd or 4th batch that I've made. And we'll get into what I've done, I'm sure, in a moment. But I'm like all of us, DIY, and just growing hops, roasting grain. It seems to all go together, making crystal malt, specialty grains. So just an interest, and tried it and liked it, and here we are.
Well, spoiler alert, what you sent us was really tasty, and we were impressed with it. So what did you start out with? Did you just start out with plain American two-row?
This is American two-row. I'll just go ahead and say it's rare, R-A-H-R, two-row. And do you want to hear about the process?
You bet.
Okay. And I don't have notes in front of me. I'm doing this from memory, so if I have to backtrack, forgive me. But I say we, that's me, myself, and I, take and measure out a certain weight. I find that 2 pounds is a good weight. Using a 3 or 4 quart boiler on the stovetop, heat about a quart of water per pound of grain. I probably do a quart and a half, just like a standard mash thickness, and heat that up to about 155, 158 maybe, and then dump my grain in. And of course, just like a regular mash, that is going to drop the temperature. And I try to hold that temperature at about 150. And this grain, just so we're clear, is unmilled. This is whole grain, whole malted two-row grain. And I keep it at 30 minutes for a 30-minute mash. And I do it somewhere between 30 minutes and 60 minutes. And I've kind of played around with that. And what you have there and what I have in front of me was actually a 60-minute mash. And I think if I had it to do over, I would back off just a little bit, more toward a 45 to 50-minute mash.
I guess we should maybe back up and define what crystal malt is. Do you want to take a stab at that?
James, you better do that.
Well, as I understand it, crystal malt is malt that is, while it is still wet, essentially, from the malting process, it is not kiln dried. It is taken to a mash rest temperature so that the enzymes in the grain, in the malted grain, will convert the starches into sugar inside the kernel. So you're essentially doing a mash inside the kernel of grain, and then they take that and then they kiln it or roast it to the color temperature, the roastiness that they want. Say, for instance, a 60 Lovibond. A Lovibond is the degree of it's a measurement of color. 60 Lovibond or 90 Lovibond or 180 Lovibond. The longer you roast it, the higher the Lovibond number, and the darker the roast. So does that make sense? Does that sound okay, Philip?
Yes, absolutely. You're just converting starch into sugar inside the grain husk rather than with it being broken down and crushed through a mill. And then you just take a curing or a drying process to dry that product. And the longer you cure it and the higher the temperatures, the darker it gets. I think you hit the nail on the head.
So if you were to crush the malt and then put it through this mashing process, you would be extracting wort.
Exactly.
You'd be getting the good stuff out of the grain. So by not crushing it, you're hoping that the good stuff stays in the grain.
Precisely. And what I think you heard me say, I play around or have played around with the amount of time that I take with the mash. 30 minutes is too little, and it's because it is, whenever you dump it in, it is completely dry grain. You're not pre-moistening it, and I'm suppose some people could do that. Might be best if you did. Maybe the pros do it that way. I'm not sure. But you're dealing with a totally dry grain, and you put it into mash, and it gets 30 minutes just isn't enough time to convert deep inside the kernel all the starch that's in there. I believe that it might even take more than an hour to get to all of it. But I believe from a taste standpoint, what I prefer is around 50 minutes.
Now, do you see in the water that is surrounding the grains, is there a bit of wort still, even though it's not crushed?
Well, James, you are a genius.
Because your standards are low, Philip.
You think mine are? You should see my wife. She married me. No, oddly enough, I had a note here, or I forgot to write down a note actually to make sure that I mentioned that the water that was left over, I actually measured the gravity on it, and it was, if I remember correctly, about 1028. It was almost 1030 degree wort, which was astounding to me, and absolutely says that some of the converted starches, the sugars, are leaching out into the water from this process.
That's interesting. Now that is smart, taking gravity reading. I'm not sure that I would have thought to do that, but you would think, I guess, it'd be interesting to see if you left the grain in there longer than, say, 50 minutes, if you would start to get diminishing returns. In other words, if more of the good stuff would leach out from those grains than you wanted, because you want that stuff to stay in there.
And I'm curious if that's what's happened to me with this, where I went about a 60-minute mash. I believe I went just a few minutes over. And what I typically do is bring it up to temperature about 53 degrees, 52, and then put it in the oven, or excuse me, bring it up to 150 and then put it in the oven on the lowest setting and leave it in there and check it every, say, 20 minutes and stir it. But I believe that's obviously some of what's going on with the duration of the mash length, that it's coming through the husk or through cracks, or somebody that's studied these a lot better than you and I could tell us what's going on. That is certainly a factor.
And we must say for our metric friends that 150 degrees Fahrenheit is around 65 C, to give you a benchmark there. So after you have this mash with the whole kernels, what's next?
Well, as I see you and Steve and others on your video where you do the mini mash and you have a metal or a screen colander, I just poured the wort. I say the wort, which I guess it really is, the wort off into another bucket or another pot through a screen mash, and a screen colander, and that separates out the grain. And then I place that into, and if we are dealing with a 2-pound amount, I place divided in half between 2 pans, and it takes some fairly large pans for 2 pounds of grain, because it swells up, it gets a little bit larger in volume, it's obviously gains weight as well through the process. And what I have are the roasting pans that you can take the lids off of, and they're the sort of a blue coating on them. I don't even know what they're called, but I've got 2 of those that I take the tops off of and put all my grain in that, and I then put it in a 180 to 190 degree oven, and you want to start it really, really low as far as the temperature goes, because you're really trying not to cook it, you're trying to dry it.
So 180 degrees would be around 82 Celsius, and then 190 is around 87, it looks like. So you're favoring closer to 180 degrees Fahrenheit?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. And how long do we stay there?
Well, you're going to need to pull it out and stir it every 20 minutes or so. I would just set my timer for about 20 minutes. And that's to begin with. The further we go, the busier you get, because the drier it gets, the more attention you have to pay to keep it from becoming well-roasted malt. So, and you will go, oh goodness, at least an hour and a half before you get anywhere close to it starting to really dry out for you. I've found that it will take 2 hours usually for what I would consider to be dry. And you could pull that out, and if it were truly dry, and save it, and it'd be ready to go. But what I wind up doing is, after about an hour at 180 to 190, I crank it up to about 200, and that gets it moving along a little bit faster. And whenever it's dry for me after 2 hours, I'm usually turning it up to 225, maybe a little bit more. And you really, because ovens are so different, you're just going to have to find out what works for you. And I do have to give some credit to, I believe it's Randy Mosher that wrote Radical Brewing. Is that
correct?
He covers this process in his book. And that's not where I got it from. I got it online. I know I've read that book before, but I think he is the inspiration or the source, at least originally, for some of what we're covering today.
And again, I have to say that 200 degrees Fahrenheit is around 92 or 3, looks like maybe.
I'd say so.
I'm still reading my chart from John in Adelaide, Australia, that I got many years ago. But we did an experiment on Basic Brewing Video many years ago where we roasted some grains. We did not make crystal malt. We just took 2-row and put that in the oven and roasted it just to make our own kind of darker specialty grains. Mm-hmm. And what we did was we put it on a pie pan or a pizza pan essentially, and then after 15 minutes took some out, 15 minutes more took some more out, 15 minutes more, and I think that I was roasting at a higher temperature, 350 degrees or so, and that's off the chart of my. I don't know what that is, but we'll have to go back and look at that video. It's been so long. But we discovered that what you're looking for to happen is the Maillard reaction, like the thing that happens when bread turns to toast. And if you've ever toasted toast in a toaster, toasted bread in a toaster, you know that can happen in the blink of an eye once it hits a certain temperature. And that's what happened with us, where the samples were pale, and then all of a sudden it hit the dividing line, and boom, the color started darkening dramatically after that. Is that what you see in your process as well?
Not quite that dramatic. And I do remember that episode and enjoyed that episode. And when I was, it actually inspired me when I was a member of a local homebrew club around Jackson, Mississippi. H-Baum, I'll give them a shout out. I hope that's okay.
Sure.
We actually did that while I was there, where we took and I don't know that we roasted our own grain, but we took various grains and did a tea with them and looked at the color and the flavors and whatnot. As you know, inspired by your process in that show. What happens here with the making of the crystal malt is, I think we sort of went through up through sort of the drying portion, and whenever you get it dry, you can pull it out then, and it's probably going to be a crystal 10, crystal 15, somewhere around in that range. I would think at home it would be awful hard to get it anything lower than 15 or so Lovabond. But once it's dried, then I crank up the heat to 250 Fahrenheit. And I can tell you with the samples that I sent you, I know for an absolute fact that the Crystal 60 stayed in at 250 for 45 minutes. And that was, and then you're taking it out every 5 to 8 minutes and stirring it to keep it from basically roasting or burning around the edges. You're always turning it. You're always pulling it out and turning it.
Well, I can see you can probably get a lot more control at that lower temperature than 350. That just makes sense to me. I've got some now. Steve took one of the bags. He took the second bag. I'm tasting the Crystal 60 now. Well, they're really good. Keep on talking, Philip. I'm eating.
I was about to join you. I've got it slid out here myself. But, in which I don't think we've even told your listeners what I sent you. I sent you 3 bags. One, what we called a Crystal 60, and I think we're pretty correct on that as far as the number. Mm-hmm. It looks from both taste as well as looking at looking at the product that it makes, what it does to a beer. And then I sent you one that is a good bit darker, and it's somewhere between a Crystal 80 and a Crystal 120. I should have probably just labeled it Crystal 100 and been done with it. And then I sent you what I had never done before, and that's probably why I sent this to you, to make you my guinea pig.
Now we know.
For roasted crystal malt. I don't know that such a beast exists. Maybe I've created it. But that was one that I tried to roast until it was a true roasted malt. And it is. It matches in color, I think, pale chocolate. To give the listener an idea of what it looks like.
Now I've got a husk in my throat.
It is a true brown, dark brown roasted malt, but it went through this crystal process.
So what did you keep track of the times for the 60 and then the 100 and then the roasted?
Well, I can tell you this: that the 60 was at 45, the 100 was another about 30 minutes, and I cannot tell you what the roasted is. It was probably another hour above the 100.
Wow.
I mean, it went and went and went, and I had to, I'm getting when I'd get a little bit of smoke, pull it out, turn it. That's just the key. And we're doing this inside. We're not doing it in a toaster. We're trying not to burn it and dealing with sugars. And so it was, it's not for the faint of heart, I suppose.
What'd your wife think of this process? As the house is filling with smoke.
Well, I'm the foodie and do most of the cooking, so whatever I do in the kitchen, she usually is okay with. I guess that's the trade-off, the price I pay.
Well, I can tell you that all three were delicious. Is there anything else that we need to know? I would assume that you got to let it cool after you go through the process before you package it up.
About as far as the process goes, once you get it to a point that you're happy with it, pull it out, let it cool, which really doesn't take that long. It certainly doesn't have that dense of a I don't know what you'd say. It's just not a dense product, especially when it's scattered out in a pan. Let it cool and then store it in a bag. And I like to wait at least 2 weeks to use it. And I think what we have here in front of us is a couple months old at this point. And you can, and I will say this, you can certainly tell the difference between this homemade crystal malt and the stuff you buy at the store, to me, in two ways. One, it just comes off as really fresh. And it comes off more like a cereal. And cereal grains is certainly a way to describe it. So there's this freshness to it, but also with me playing with the mash lengths, I think I've sort of unlocked some of what the big boys do with how they make their crystal, because when you taste the commercial products beside the homemade, you can really tell that the homemade has more of the starches converted to sugar. They're just generally sweeter.
Yeah, we talked about this in the recording that we're about to hear, but yes, I agree. We were surprised at how. And I'm surprised to hear that these are 2 months old, because they are really crunchy, really fresh tasting, and it's like a cereal. It's like a granola. It is a delight to eat just on its own. So why don't we go on to the recording that Steve and I did, where I prepared a control. These are all extract beers, all extract pale ales. I did a control, and then I did a small batch of each of these beers, or each of these grains in different beers. So with that tortured explanation, here we go. Well, Steve Wilkes, welcome back to the studio.
Thanks, James. It's good to be back.
Now, we are tasting a 15-minute IPA. And it's almost a double IPA, because I either didn't add enough water, I boiled too long, even though it was 15 minutes. It's a little thicker than I anticipated it to be. But we are tasting specialty grains, homemade specialty grains. Very exciting.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. That's what they sound like.
Now, does the 60 sound different from the...
Let's see. Yeah, I think the 60 sounds a little heavier. A little roastier.
Okay, so the recipe was, and I didn't do the metric, 1 pound of light dry malt extract, which I think is, 450 grams?
Don't ask me.
That's the fermentable, and then 3 quarts of water, which is about 3 liters, right? Something like that.
Yeah.
But then I boiled for 15 minutes, 10 grams of Cascade at 15 minutes, 18 grams at flame out. So basically an ounce of Cascade, a little bit of USO5 in each. What else? Oh, I did 4 batches. The first batch was extract only with no specialty grains. The next 3 batches were 3 ounces each of each of these crystal malts that were crushed in a baggie and then steeped for 30 minutes in 150-degree water. And I can't remember what is it. 150, is that 65? I don't know. So anyway, so I had a little assembly line going. While the first batch with no specialty grains was boiling, I was steeping, boiling and cooling. I was steeping the next batch, and then when I got done pitching the first batch, the brewing water was already ready for the second batch. So here we have these beers. So first of all, let's taste the control with just light dry malt extract and the Cascade hops.
Well, it's a nice beer. It is a little thicker or more robust than I would expect from the recipe, so I think you maybe did boil a little long.
Needed to add a little bit more water.
Yeah, but it's really good beer, and since it's the control, it will be the same for each one, so it doesn't really matter.
Right. But these are all flat for some reason. I put 4 of those little sugar tablets in each, so maybe I need to add 5 next time in each bottle, or maybe the bathroom downstairs where I had this is too cold.
You mean the aging station?
Oh yes, the bottle conditioning room.
That's right. Let's get our terminology right here.
Yeah, the bottle conditioning room may be a little chilly.
I noticed that. but I'm much better now.
So the Cascade hops come through nicely. Yeah. It's a little syrupy, teeny bit, but the little carbonation might have helped that as well.
Yeah, it just needs a little carbonation. But it's a nice beer. Nothing wrong with that.
I could drink that all day.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's taste the grain. We have the homemade Crystal 60 here.
Yep.
And we'll talk to Phil about how he made it. We've got these 1-gallon bags here. We'll taste a little bit.
Well, that's really good. It's
very,
like
sorry.
It's like granola.
Mm-hmm.
It's real crunchy and not. It's like the crunch falls apart. So it's not like a sunflower seed where, if you chew on a sunflower seed or a pumpkin seed, you got to do something with that husk. Unless you really want some fiber.
I think it's very good.
Really?
It's very, very fresh tasting to me. The crunch is, like you said, is very sharp and dry and just fresh. It just tastes like it's just like fresh cereal or something.
Yeah, I want to grind this up, make flour, and then bake with it or something. It's really good.
It's also sweet. There's a bit of sweetness there, which is nice, and you would expect that with a crystal malt. But here is the beer that I made. Cheers, by the way.
Cheers.
We have plastic cups that we can see through. The impact on the color is evident. This is now a sort of a rich copper color, something that you would expect from that range of crystal malt.
Yep.
Whereas the first one is more of kind of a hay color, kind of I guess you'd say dark yellow maybe.
Yeah.
I think it's sweeter. I think that the impact of the hops is lessened a little bit.
Yeah, I think it definitely lessened it. I guess that's from the residual sugar, kind of holding that flavor down some, which is not a bad thing. I mean, it tastes really good. It reminds me a little bit of like an English mild or something like that. And that could also be the carbonation, because it's a very low carbonated beer, as if there's any carbonation. But it's really good.
It is sweeter. I don't get a lot of roastiness.
No, it's not roasty at all, I don't think.
But it's very good. But again, the impact the impacts that I see mostly are on the color. It's darker, and I'll put a picture out on the Facebook page. And it is a bit sweeter, and the hops are muted a bit.
Yeah, and the sweetness almost, and maybe I'm reaching, but it almost seems like a little brown sugar kind of flavor to me. Kind of reminds me of like a sugar cookie, like a little bit of a molasses sugar cookie, the way it tastes.
And this is an extract beer that is a little higher gravity than I wanted it to be, so it already starts out with kind of a sweet base.
Yeah.
All right. The 80 to 120, which is a big range, grain here. Don't dump that bag on the floor.
Oh, good Lord, no.
I hate to waste it. Wow. Crunchy.
Mm-hmm. Again, it's really good. It's like really good cereal. Well, it is really good cereal.
Think Raisin Bran.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Put some raisins in that.
No, I can taste the raisins.
Yeah.
You don't need 2 scoops with that. No. I get you. It's sweet, and I can taste raisins if I close my eyes
and think of England.
I can taste the raisins.
Well, whatever floats your boat.
The Queen Mary. Okay, now you've still got the second beer. There we go.
All right.
So, did you taste raisins in that?
I did, actually, yeah. Once you suggested it. Power of suggestion.
Right, but I think it was there.
Yep. Okay.
So now we're tasting the third beer. It has that.
And now that you have brought raisins into my vocabulary, that's very raisiny, and it's really good. I keep saying that. I keep saying it's really good, because it is.
Smooth.
I'm not getting any green apple.
Mm-hmm.
It's becoming, more porter-like, and as you would expect.
It's sweet.
Yeah.
The hops, again, are muted.
I actually wouldn't mind more hops in this one. Meaning, well, I don't even know what I mean, because it depends on what you're trying to brew.
Right.
But I guess what I'm hearing from you is that as we get darker with each one of these roasts, at least the first two, the hops seem to be pulled, the perceived hops seem to be pulled down a little more with each brew. So if you want to keep the hop up, you might want to add a little bit more to it than you might have done otherwise.
Yeah. But very tasty.
Mm-hmm.
And the next one, the roasted, was my favorite when I was brewing, because when I brewed this batch, the kitchen's filled with this chocolatey, roasty coffee smell. It just smelled. The wort just smelled really, really good.
Okay.
Again, very, very crunchy.
I'm just struck by how fresh tasting this is.
Right.
And I'm not going to need lunch. That's for sure.
Now this, you get a little bit of coffee.
Yeah, this is getting. But it's not as powerful a flavor as like black patent malt or
right.
or chocolate malt would be.
The sweetness is diminished. It's not. It doesn't taste as sweet to me.
It has a little bit of a kind of a burnt toast flavor to it.
Exactly. That's it. I was going to say ashy, but that's not right. Not burnt toast, just toast.
Just toast.
Toasted bread.
Yeah, darkly toasted.
Well toasted wheat bread.
That's right. Yes.
I think that's it.
Well, we can quit now.
Yeah. Well, except we got to taste his beer.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it's fruity, but I think that might still be the hop influence. I wish I didn't put I don't say this a lot, but I wish I didn't put as many finishing hops in this. Maybe because this was a grain experiment. I put a bunch of hops in the end. I couldn't help myself.
Well, but it's interesting to see how the hops and the specialty grains play against each other.
Right.
And so that's a value, I think, which makes this different from, say, just making a tea, which we could have done as well. This really would make a very nice stout. Mm-hmm. Just terrific.
I was afraid when I tasted the wort that the hops were going to clash with the roastiness of the grain, but I don't think it does.
No, and maybe that's just, it still seems to be pretty much in balance to me. I'm not offended by either one. You know what I mean? Sometimes you get a beer that's so malty that it's just like, oh, please, either get me some pancakes or throw this stuff away, because you want to do, and or the other side of it is it's just so darn hoppy that it's completely out of balance with what the malt bill is. These are still pretty, they're all four nicely balanced beers. And
I was expecting with the roasted one to get a little bit of dark fruit, like a prune or, something like that.
Yeah. I
don't get that. It's more of the toasty thing that you were saying.
Yeah, it's probably good, because if you'd gotten prunes and then all this fiber, you'd have been in the beer aging room a lot quicker.
Off to the bottle conditioning room.
Hi-ho!
Hey-o. All right, Steve.
Thanks, James. This was a good experiment, and thanks. What's our guest's name? I'm
Phil.
So sorry, Phil. Thank you, Phil, because these are really, really nice, and you got a bunch of this stuff that you might share.
Yeah, well, yes, I shall, because I'd like to see what you would make out of this.
Yeah,
we've got enough for full batches.
Oh yeah, for sure.
All right, and we got to do it ourselves.
Yes, we do.
We'll get the details from Phil on how it's done,
and then we'll go back and try it ourselves and compare it.
And ours won't be as good.
No, I'm sure. But it'll be fun.
All right, thanks, Steve.
Thank you, James.
So, Philip, have you tried the beers yet?
I did. I went through the arduous and hard task of getting up this morning and getting into to beer.
Well, I'm sure that you sampled in moderation.
Yeah, maybe an ounce and a half of each.
There you go. So, what was your impression? You heard Steve and my impressions. What did you think?
Well, I thought it was great to get free beer. These were great. Send more. I'm not sure, though. I think you need more samples next time. My reflections are very much in line with yours and Steve's. I think you alluded to that these are a little bit strong as beers, and they're certainly well hopped for what we're doing here. But it doesn't really get in the way. And, if we were sitting here with really weak, insipid beers, we'd be saying, well, I wonder how it would taste if they were stronger or had more flavor. So, job well done. Thank you, James.
Well, I think that it was a good experiment in that it tests the effect of crystal malts on hoppy beers, because we did see the especially between just the control, which was light dry malt extract with no specialty grains, and then the adding 3 ounces of this Crystal 60 in that first batch, it diminished the impact of the hops noticeably.
It did, and you can notice it all the way down the line. And I actually have them set out in front of me right now. I don't know if you do. You obviously have some of the grain there. But what yeast did you use? I don't know if you said that or if I didn't catch it.
Safale USO5, just
Okay.
a couple grams in each sample. So just, in fact, I had that was like half a packet that I had left over from another small batch experiment a long time ago. So I was happy to see that that yeast was still alive and kicking. But we were extremely impressed with the quality of the specialty grains and the, as I said on the recording, the way that the kitchen smelled when I was brewing with the roasted crystal was amazing. I thought that was wonderful stuff.
Well, thank you, and also the quality of the beer you sent me is quite good, especially for small experimental batches. Well done, James.
Now that we are firmly entrenched into the Mutual Admiration Society.
Amen.
I've not heard of roasted crystal before. This opens up, as homebrewing often does, this opens up a lot of doors. For example, you use just American two-row. What if we used something like Maris Otter or Golden Promise or Vienna Malt or all these base malts that I'm assuming that you don't get crystal malt from?
Well, James, I happen to have sitting behind me on the floor about 70 pounds of grain, among which is a good 20 plus pounds of Munich. And I'm thinking that is my next endeavor with this, is to make some Munich caramels, Cara Munich. And I know that I don't believe we had mentioned this in emailing or speaking earlier, but I had my own specialty grains in my bin in the utility room in there, and I went and pulled those out. And this is something I hadn't done before. We were going to talk, but I pulled out Crystal 40, an English dark crystal malt, and an English pale chocolate to compare with our array of three examples here. And I've got some comparison notes between those, or just some general thoughts if you wanted to hear that.
Sure.
The Crystal 60, the homemade Crystal 60 versus the Caramel 40 of commercial variety is, you can tell just a stark difference between the starches that are present in the Caramel 40 versus the homemade Crystal. That's the most prominent thing. And then the Crystal 60 is a good bit darker in flavor as far as the sugars, the caramels, and I have some tasting notes here as well. And I know that's what you and Steve did. I don't know if you want me to get into any of that or not, but my notes very much reflect y'all's.
Well, this has been. Is there anything else? Are there any pitfalls that you would recommend people avoid in this process?
Don't burn it.
Just pay attention.
That's really the only mistake you can make. I would suppose the two mistakes that you can make are not leaving it in long enough to convert the starch into sugar, and then trying to dry it out too fast, becoming impatient in those areas, or becoming inattentive once it is dried out, and just you wind up burning it. And if you do that, you're just going to burn it around the edges unless you really burn it. And then you're going to wind up with a inconsistent product.
So how thick is the layer of grain in the pan, in the oven?
The smaller amount you do, if you start doing this with, say, a pound, and you're dividing that between two say, average size cookie sheets, this is going to go probably a good bit faster for you, and that layer is probably 1/4 of an inch. Just not much at all. But what I was doing here with 2 to 2+ pounds, was better part of, I don't know, between an inch and a quarter, between an inch and a quarter, excuse me.
So yeah, it's something that will take some sort of art as well as science to master. It sounds like.
Yeah, it's sort of just like brewing. You've got to figure out what works for you, and that's the best way to do it, is what works for you.
Excellent. Well, I think that's a good place to leave it. I greatly appreciate the grain, the crystal malt, and Steve took the middle bag. He took the 80 to 120, so I'm looking forward to seeing what he brews with that, and I am inspired to upscale a pale ale recipe and use some of this Crystal 60, and then maybe I'm thinking maybe a Belgian double or something like that with the roasted crystal.
It's very funny you said that, because that is my notes here. My notes on the roasted crystal, it literally says, nose reminds me of a Belgian double or English mild. And it's some of it is the fruitiness of the hops that are in there, I'm sure, that are bringing out that mental connection, but there's something about that certainly connects there. So I think that would work really well.
Very nice. Well, you'll have to let us know the results from the Maris Otter test. I want to play around with some of that stuff myself. So, and I'd be interested to hear what the listeners have as well.
Well, James, I want to make sure that I thank you for including me on your brewing and basic brewing journey. Yours and Steve's both. Steve, hello. And also to thank you on behalf of homebrewers everywhere that the entertainment value and enjoyment that you guys add to our lives, but also the information and the point of focus that you give us for as a community. So thank you both.
Well, shucks. now my head's too big to get out of the studio. So
I'm just wanting more beer. You know me.
All right. Thanks, Philip.
I appreciate it, James.
Well, thanks again to Philip. Philip has one more thing to add. He says, one thing I forgot to mention on the roasted malt is to get it darker. I eventually did turn the oven up to 275 to 300, probably being impatient. Philip says, of course, at those temperatures, you have to stir it every 5 minutes or so. So you want to make sure that you don't burn the stuff as you're getting it darker. The samples that Philip sent us were so tasty that not only do I want to use those, I want to do this myself very soon with something other than just plain old American two-row. So stay tuned for that. In the meantime, if you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say howdy, write to james@basicbrewing.com, or just fill out the contact form at basicbrewing.com. And please don't forget to tell us where you're from. Check out our support link where you can throw a couple of bucks into the tip jar by subscribing financially to our podcasts, and I'll send you an email if you do with bonus stuff that you can't see just on the podcast feed. Be sure to check out our DVDs, Extract Brewing and Partial Mashing, Stepping into All Grain, Low-Tech Lagering and Decoction Mashing, and Introduction to Wine Kits. You can find them all on our site. You can get a free Basic Brewing bottle opener with any DVD combo, and you can check out our Basic Brewing shirts in the store as well as our logbooks, where you can track and log up to 50 batches of beer. You can see a listing of the fine folks across the country who sell our DVDs on basicbrewing.com. If there isn't a vendor in your area, you can order them online in our online shop at basicbrewingshop.com. Thanks to everybody who's continued to click on our Amazon.com link. We greatly appreciate the support. It's been a very busy week this week for some reason. Our featured products this week that were purchased through the link are Fundamentals of Electricity for Agriculture, 3rd edition, and Proform Pro 2000 Treadmill. It is a new year. I know the feeling. Got to get moving. Thanks again, everybody. And remember, I can't tell who bought what, so no worries there. Just click on the Amazon.com logo on our site the next time you feel like Amazon shopping. We greatly appreciate your support. And don't forget, you can also join the American Homebrewers Association or subscribe to Brew Your Own magazine through the associate links on basicbrewing.com. That's all until next time. Until then, thanks for listening, everybody. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio and our website is provided by Kelly Dodson. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. We'll talk to you next time, everybody. So long.